Hey guys, how's it going? I know it's been a few days. I have been observing the Feast of Tabernacles. This video is going to be about the Tribulation Timeline. It is different from the End of Days timeline that I posted last week. However, knowing both goes hand in hand because the End of Days timeline runs into the Tribulation Timeline. And they kind of feed into each other like this. They fit together like a puzzle. What I've done is I started with a clean slate. And then I started working on this timeline. The things that I have found in this study are amazing. And I think you're going to find them just as amazing too. There are different concepts in this timeline than any of the other tribulation timelines you've ever seen. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss this video. I'll see you on the other side. Welcome to the other side. First, what I'm going to do is review the End of Days timeline very quickly so we're all caught up to the exact point of what this entire video will actually be about. Last week in the End of Days timeline, it starts off with Genesis 6 verse 3, where we learn that there are 120 years that the Lord's Spirit would strive with man. My spirit is referring to Jubilee years. So there is 6,000 years from creation to Armageddon. We can go to Genesis 5 verse 3 and start adding up all the generations of Adam. When you add all that up, it equals 1948 years. Everything was done on Enoch calendar's time, which has a different number of days, and there's even days that you don't count in there. There's 4 of them. You can go to Leland Jones's channel to learn all about the Enoch calendar, and then we come to a period in time between Abraham and Anno Domini, Christ. And that period of time we cannot solve for without going to the end of time first and working backwards. You go forward 6,000 years, you're going to end up at 2024 AD. Then from there, you're going to work back 2,024 years, and you come to Anno Domini. Anno Domini and Abraham, there's a period of time that is talked about in Matthew chapter 1 verse 17. You add up those generations, it's 42 generations. So now there's 3 periods of time there. Abraham to David, David to the carrying away unto Christ. Okay, that's 14 generations each. You add them up, that's 42 generations. So each period of time is equivalent in length. That brings us to Anno Domini. Now, Abraham was around about 1999 BC. On the Enoch calendar, that would be 1970 years. You have to convert that time over to the Gregorian calendar because we will run into it before we get to Anno Domini or Christ. You convert 1970 years over by taking 1970, multiplying that by 365.242199, and then you divide it by 360 days that you would actually count on the Enoch calendar. And then you're going to go forward another 2,053 years, Enoch years. That's what we've accounted for during that 6,000 year span. Then you've got to convert it, just like we just did with the period of time between Abraham and Anno Domini. You're going to convert 2,053 by taking 6,000 minus 1,948 years from 6,000 minus 1,999 years. All right. That's going to give you 2,053 years remaining. Then you take 2,053, divide that by 365.242199, and then you get 2024. Okay? That's how we know when the end of that 6,000 years is. Now we need to look at the beginning of the tribulation timeline.
Okay, up on your screen, you're going to see a snapshot from Wikipedia in regards to the Battle of Siddim. It says, they caught up with them in the city of Dan, flanking the enemy on multiple sides during a night raid. The attack ran its course as far as Hobah, north of Damascus, where he defeated Chedorlaomer and his forces. Abraham, recovered all the goods and the captives, including Lot.
And now that we know that that period of time was a 14-year span, it is pertaining to the times of the end, and it does apply. In that verse, chapter 14, verse 5, the word used for smote is H3540, and it means to slay. Now, who did he slay? He slayed Chedorlaomer. If you have a Strong's Concordance app, you can click on the name Chedorlaomer, and you pull it up and it says Persian king. So where else do we find a Persian king? Well, we find a Persian king in Daniel chapter 8. Okay, so Daniel chapter 8, verse 7. It says, and I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram, and brake his two horns, and there was no power in the ram to stand before him. But he cast him down to the ground, and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Verse 19 through 20. And it says, and he said, behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation. Okay, that's talking about, for at the time appointed the end shall be. And it says, the ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia. So we just found out that Chedorlaomer in Genesis 14:5 is a Persian king. Okay, and he was smote. Same word that Daniel used in verse 7. Verse 13 through 14. And we get the beginnings of our timeline. Verse 13, it says, then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice, and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden under foot? Verse 14 says, and he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. From the host trodden to the daily sacrifice is 2,300 days. When's the host trodden? That's the end of time. That's Armageddon. Daniel chapter 12, verse 11 through 12. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. So now we need to go forward in time 1,290 days from April 30th, 2018. And that brings us to November 10th to the 11th of 2021. All right, praise God. It says, blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,305 days, which we will not get into that time period until we get into talking about the seventh trumpet, the third woe. To recap, we had Genesis chapter 14, verse 5, and it says that Abraham smote or slayed Chedorlaomer. We find that information in Daniel chapter 8. verse 7. It says that he smote the ram and brake his two horns, and there was no power in the ram to stand before him. Then we went to verse 19, and it says, and he said, Behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation. For at the time appointed, the end shall be. And that ram is the Persian king, and the Persian king is the ram that was smote in verse 7. You back up to verse 13, it says that there was a saint talking to another saint. It says, How long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? The host to be trodden underfoot. And he said unto me, Unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Unto. You go in reverse from 2024, the end. You go in reverse 2,300 days, you come to April 30th, 2018. Then we found in Daniel 12, verse 11 and 12, it says, From the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, April 30th, 2018, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. That's how we arrive at November 11th to the 10th of 2021. Just next month, actually. I'm not setting dates. The Bible has things in it called patterns or dates. If you go to Ezekiel chapter 43, verse 10, it says, Thou son of man, show the house to the house of Israel, that they may be ashamed of their iniquities, and let them measure the pattern. We're going to go into the book of Esther, and we're going to go to chapter 1, verse 3. So that's the third year of his reign. He made a feast unto all the princes and his servants, the power of Persia and Media, the nobles and princes of the provinces being before him. If you go to Ezra chapter 8, verses 1 through 14, you'll find that the number of men are being numbered here. Leland Jones, he's calculating it as 1,510. I'm not even going to disagree. One man is not going to make that much of a difference in a calculation. I calculate it as 1,511. Same thing, really, okay? It's still scary accurate. And then, in that same book, there's 220 Nethinims. You have 220 Nethinims and 1,511 men. So those numbers also play a part in all this as well. And it confirms the start of Esther's preparation. If you go to Esther chapter 1, verse 4, it says, When he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the honor of his excellent majesty many days, even 180 days. That is a 180-day period. But there's more. It says in verse 5, And when these days were expired, the king made a feast unto all the people that were present in the Shushan palace, both unto great and small, 7 days in the court of the garden of the king's palace. Recap real quick. We have the third year of his reign. He showed his riches of his glorious kingdom and honor, 180 days, made a feast for 7 days. So now we have a 187-day period, which is 3.5 years. Esther chapter 2, verse 12. It says, Now when every maid's turn was come to go in to King Ahasuerus, after that she had been 12 months, according to the manner of the women. So were the days of their purifications accomplished, to wit, 6 months of oil and myrrh, and 6 months of sweet odors. So now you have 6 months and 6 months, that's a year. This is called Esther's preparation. She's preparing herself to go before the king. you can find preparation and purification in the book of Leviticus, which does also play a part in all this. Esther's preparation ends on the first day of the first month, which typically is the middle of March. And from there's a feast. Esther chapter 2, verse 16 tells us when Esther goes before the king. It says, "So Esther was taken unto the king Ahasuerus into his house royal in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign." Recap, we had 3 years, then we had 187 days, and then we have a period of time where Vashti refused to go before the king, and the king was wroth, it says, is the king's wrath, the period of the time of the king's wrath. And that is going to last until Esther's preparation begins, because he found favor with her sight. So she has a year to prepare. And he is wroth during that period. The king's wrath takes place, and Haman gets set up during that period. And what happens is Esther gets a year to prepare, and her preparation ends on a certain date when she's crowned. We find the crowning of Esther in Revelation chapter 12. Go to Revelation chapter 12, and it says, "And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon at her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars." It then says, "And she being with child cried, travailing in birth, and pained to be delivered." That is Esther being crowned here. And that happened on 9/22/17. In chapter 2, Esther, verse 18, "Then the king made a great feast unto his princes and his servants, even Esther's feast. And he made a release to the provinces and gave gifts according to the state of the king." So now we have another feast. So you take 9/22/17, which is the Revelation 12 sign. Everybody's heard about it. And you subtract 187 days, you come to the first day of the first month on the Enoch calendar, which would be when Esther's preparation ended. You're going to subtract 6 months of oil of myrrh and 6 months of sweet odors, which is a year. What does that bring you to? The first day of the first month, 2016. So now we're left with a period of time again. Apply our constants, the things we know, and we end up with a period of time in the middle that we can then just calculate. So now we're between the start of Esther's preparation and the end of the first 187-day period feast after the 3rd year of the king's reign. In chapter 2 of Esther, verse 16, we find out that Esther went before the king in the 7th year. If we go to the end of the timeline and we subtract 14 years, we're going to end up at 2010. Now we know in the 7th year, that's going to bring us to 2017, that she went before the king in the 10th month, the month of Tebeth. You go to the Revelation 12 sign, which is Esther being crowned, and you subtract 180 days, and then you come to the first day of the first month on the Enoch calendar, 2017, and then you're going to subtract another 12 months. You're going to come back to the first day of the first month, 2016. And that is going to leave you with a 2-year period of the king's wrath. Esther chapter 2, verse 17, it says, "And the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti." If we go back to Revelation chapter 7, verse 1, it says, "After these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree." That means they're being held back. They're being withheld from actually occurring. And there's also 3 woes, which we'll get into. Trumpet number 1 is found in Revelation 8:7. It says, "The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire, mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth, and the third part of the trees was burnt up, and all green grass was burnt up." So we know that there's a period of time between the 7th month, which is the Revelation 12 sign, and the 10th month. 3 months. Because there is a 3-month period unaccounted for. Esther went before the king in the 10th month. So that is not September. That is December. That occurs from the Revelation 12 sign until the 10th month. Then from there we have trumpet number 1. The first angel sounded, there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth, and the third part of trees was burnt up, and all green grass was burnt up. That was wind number 1. Trumpet number 2, you will find in Revelation 8, verse 8, it says, "And the second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and the third part of the sea became blood." All right, praise God. That is wind number 2, also being withheld back due to Revelation chapter 7, verse 1. Trumpet number 3, or the third wind that's being withheld back, is Revelation chapter 8, verse 10. "And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called wormwood." Wormwood actually means bitter. Trumpet number 4. It's the 4th wind being held back, is Revelation 8, verse 12. It says, "And the 4th angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened. And the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. And I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe." 1, 2, 3 woes. "To the inhabitants of the earth by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the 3 angels which are yet to sound." Trumpet number 5 you're going to find in Revelation 9, verse 1. It says, "And the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit." So the star is a he. Yep. "And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue his name is Apollyon. 1 woe is past, and behold, there come 2 woes more hereafter." It says, "And the 6th angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the 6th angel which had the trumpet, Loose the 4 angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates." You can find the binding of them in the river Euphrates in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 51, verse 63. "But in the days of the voice of the 7th angel," okay, so the voice of the 7th angel, "when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished, as he has declared to his servants, the prophets. The part that says the mystery of God should be finished means that the mystery of God should be finished, and that is finished when in bowl 7 when it says it is done. So the 7th trumpet says, and I took the little book out of the angel's hand and ate it up, and it was in my mouth sweet as honey, and as soon as I had eaten it, my belly was bitter. Verse 11, and he said unto me, thou must prophesy again before many peoples and nations and tongues and kings. All right, so from there, we're going to talk about Ezra and how it applies to the timeline. Ezra chapter 8 does apply to the timeline. Some people have mentioned, no, it doesn't. It's talking about the number of men. It's talking about numbers. And here's your proof. Ezra chapter 8, verse 1. It says, these are now the chief of their fathers, and this is the genealogy of them that went up with me from Babylon in the reign of Artaxerxes the king. So the word genealogy, if you open up your Strong's Concordance app, you click on that word in Ezra 8 verse 1, it says genealogy in King James Version. You click on it, it means to number for uses of time. The other time that we saw genealogy was in Genesis, where the generations of Adam, that is a genealogy. It's telling you about time. And you also have the number of people that were born unto this person, unto that person, begat. So it's talking about time. And in Ezra chapter 8, verse 20, it says, also of the Nethinims, whom David and the princes had appointed for the service of the Levites, 220 Nethinims. All of them were expressed by a name. That the number 220, when we use this as time, Leland Jones explained it that you just convert the number of people to days. And that is correct in this case, because, and the proof is, verse 1 of chapter 8 says genealogy. It is time. So 220 Nethinims is the exact number of days from the 9th of Av, 2015, to the beginning of Esther's year of preparation, using 6 months of oil of myrrh and 6 months of sweet odors. Amazing, right? It's the exact number of days. So from there, if you apply the 1,511 men in chapter 8 to the end of the 220 days, or Esther's preparation, you come precisely to CV19 in 2020, which is also quite amazing. The 5th trumpet in Ezra. That's how we're going to apply Ezra chapter 8. That takes us all the way through the 5th trumpet. We also have another calculation here coming up pretty quick. It's pretty cool. Her preparation, then you have the feast of 187 days, and that feast ends on September 22nd, 2017, with the woman clothed with the sun. From there, we're going to look at Matthew 24, verse 29. It says, in the tribulation of those days, that is the previous 7 years that we just covered, from 2010 to 2017, in the woman clothed with the sun. The woman clothed with the sun basically marks the midpoint of the 14-year tribulation timeline. Okay, so now you guys are saying that, well, there's a period here that's not covered between the end of the feast, end of the feast in the 7th year to the 10th month that Esther went before the king. And that is explained in Leviticus. The Revelation 12 sign says that she bore a child. Okay? So you have to go to Leviticus chapter 12, verse 2. I'm just going to read it, and then you're going to see why. Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, If a woman have conceived seed and born a man-child, then she shall be unclean 7 days. So now we have 7 days. According to the days of the separation, for her infirmity shall she be unclean. And in the 8th day the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. So there's 8 days. And she shall then continue in the blood of her purifying 33 days. So that brings us to 41 days. She shall touch no hallowed thing, or come into the sanctuary until the days of her purifying be fulfilled. This is important. So we calculated 41 days, and there's another period of time here that we're going to calculate too. It says, and when the days of her purifying are fulfilled for a son or for a daughter, she shall bring a lamb of the first year for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon, and a turtle dove. Okay, for a sin offering, unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, unto the priest. The turtle dove tells us exactly what time of year this is going to take place, which is in the 10th month, Tebeth. It occurs during the time period of Hanukkah. But turtle doves is actually a tradition that the Jews recognize during the Feast of Dedication that happens yearly, and that is Hanukkah. Alright, so now we know that this should bring us, these days should bring us to Hanukkah. Just so happens that if you calculate the days between September 22nd, 2017 and the Feast of Hanukkah, 2017, if we calculate it correctly, you will come up with 74 days. And that would bring you to December 5th, 2017. Hanukkah. Okay? And that's confirmed with the word turtle dove here. And that's because she had to be purified. She had a child September 22nd. So now she has to go through the purification process. 9:22:17, it says, the sign of the Son of Man in heaven is Revelation 12 sign. The sun darkened, moon doesn't give its light, is the total eclipse on August 21st, 2017. Exactly 30 days before. So then we're going to come into part of the Revelation 12 sign here. In Revelation 12, which is 9:22:17, verse 14, it says, time, times, and half a time. This period is 3.5 years. So we're developing a pattern now. In Esther, we developed 3 years and 180 days, and then there's the 7-day period. It says time, times, and half a time. That's 1,260 days. That began on September 22nd, 2017, when Esther is crowned. This also begins the period of the trumpets, 3.5 years. And we found out in the 3rd year of the king's reign, and then he had a 180-day feast, so there's 3.5 as well. And then we found out that there was 2 years of the king's wrath, plus 1 year of Esther's preparation, it's 3 years, and then there was a feast, 180 days, 9:22:17. That's when 1,260 days begins, due to the Revelation 12 sign telling us there is time, times, and half a time. From there, Leviticus 15:29 talks about the turtle dove. 15 verse 29 says, and on the 8th day she shall take unto her 2 turtles or 2 pigeons, and bring them unto the priest to the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. What is the 8th day? It's talking about Hanukkah, turtle doves. 8th day, Hanukkah, the Feast of Dedication. How do we get to Hanukkah? Here's how we got to Hanukkah. You go to Leviticus chapter 12, and you add it up. It says, if a woman conceived seed and born a man-child, Revelation 12 sign, she was travailing in birth, pain to be delivered. It says, she shall be unclean 7 days. And in the 8th day the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. And then she shall continue in the blood of her purifying 33 days. So it's 33 plus 1, 34 plus 7, 41. She shall touch no hallowed thing, nor come into the sanctuary until the days of her purifying be fulfilled. And then it says that, but if she bear a maid child, then she shall be unclean 2 weeks instead of 1 week. In Leviticus 12 verse 2, it says, born a man child, it's a boy, she shall be unclean 7 days. But if she bear a maid child, then she'll be unclean 2 weeks, as in her separation. And she shall continue in the blood of her purifying 66 days. And when the days of her purifying are fulfilled for a son or for a daughter, she shall bring a lamb of the first year for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove. That's 12. Leviticus chapter 12 talks about the process of a woman purifying herself after having a child. So she needs to bring a burnt offering and a young pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering. We're going to go to Leviticus 15 verse 29, and we find out that there's 8 more days. So 66 days plus 8 days brings us to 74 days. Leviticus 15 verse 29 says, and on the 8th day she shall take unto her 2 turtle doves, or 2 young pigeons, and bring them unto the priest to the door of the tabernacle of the congregation on the 8th day. Well, Hanukkah's 8 days. So now we know that there's 74 days. You take September 22nd, 2017, and you add 74 days. What day do you come to? The Feast of Dedication. And that is when the first trumpet is blown. Wind number 1. You can find the first trumpet in chapter 8 of Revelation, verse 7. It says, the first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth, and the third part of the trees was burnt up, and all green grass was burnt up. And Esther 2:16 says, so Esther was taken unto the king Ahasuerus into his house royal in the 10th month, which is the month Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. We already know that 922 happened in the 7th year of the king's reign, sitting upon the throne. And in the 10th month, well, that follows Hanukkah. Then we go into the second trumpet, chapter 8, verse 8. And the second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and the third part of the sea became blood. That's going to happen according to our pattern, which is almost established here. You're going to notice a pattern. The third trumpet, Revelation 8, verse 10, the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called wormwood. Third trumpet is the third wind. We're going to move into trumpet number 4, which is wind number 4. And the fourth angel sounded, chapter 8, Revelation, verse 12. And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars. So as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heavens, saying with a loud voice, woe, 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 to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the 3 angels, which are yet to sound. Okay, that's the fourth trumpet. Now, the first 4 trumpets are held back, or why we know that they're held back, in Revelation 7, verse 1. And it says, after these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. Chapter 8, it's talking about the third part of the creatures in the sea, the life, the ships destroyed, cast in the sea. The third part of the sea became blood. hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth. Third part of the trees and was burnt up. All green grass is burnt up. That's how we know the four winds are talking about the first four trumpets. And then we go into the fifth trumpet. I'm not going to read all of chapter 9 to you, just the first two verses. Okay? Chapter 9, Revelation, verse 1 says, And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, and as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. There came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, and the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but they should be tormented 5 months, and their torment was as the torment of a scorpion. When the fifth trumpet is blown, it's a 5-month period, okay? And that 5-month period is going to last from roughly Hanukkah time frame of 2019, 5 months forward. That brings us through April, okay? Which is exactly when the entire world got locked down. We have trumpet number 6, which is the second woe. Chapter 9, verse 12 says, One woe is past, and behold, there come 2 woes more hereafter. And the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the sixth angel, which had the trumpet, Loose the 4 angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. You can find those 4 angels that are bound in the great river Euphrates in Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 63. It says, The scroll was cast into the river, and that is the river. Leland Jones did a great piece on this. You need to go to his channel, look that up, learn all about it. Trumpet number 7. This one leads into a whole another part, the second half of this timeline, of this last 7 years that we're covering. First 7 years occurred from 2010 to the Revelation 12 sign, and we began the second 7 years, which we're almost ready to start the second 1260 days. We're 3.5 years through it once the 7th trumpet comes around. And this trumpet is blown in Revelation 10 verse 7. But in the days of the voice of the 7th angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished, as he hath declared to his servants the prophets. And the voice which I heard from heaven spake unto me again, and said, Go and take the little book which is open in the hand of the angel, which standeth upon the sea and upon the earth. Now that we're here, I'm going to mention something that some of you will probably disagree with. But the 7th trumpet is where the 1335 days begins. Now, it just so happens that we're not done the first 1260 days yet. We're not done until the first day of the first month of 2021. Okay, so we still have, as of the 7th trumpet being blown, there is still 2 months and 15 days. As of the 7th trumpet being blown. Which is why I'm saying that the 1335 days begins when the 7th trumpet is blown. 2 months and 15 days is how long? Well, 75 days. You're going to take 1335 minus 75 days. You get how many days left? 1260, which is times and half a time, which we find in Daniel verse 7. Daniel verse 7 and 725 both say that. And we have this information because in Daniel it talks about the 1335 days in Daniel 12. Remember I told you in the beginning that we need to pay attention to this because it's going to be important later. Here it is. It says 12:12, blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,305 days. But go thou thy way till the end be, for thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot at the end of the days. Well, what's the end of the days? Well, that's 2024. Okay, go thy way until the end be. Okay, so you think until the end be. So what's that telling you? Well, in the seventh trumpet, it says, goes until the mystery of God is finished. That's the 1,335 days, which began at the blowing of the seventh trumpet. You have a 2-month, 15-day period gap between the seventh trumpet and the start of the second half of the tribulation, the Great Tribulation, which is 3.5 years long, 1,260 days. We find that in 12 verse 7. And I heard a man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river. Right there, same thing. When he held up his right hand and his left unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times, and a half a time. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, and all these things shall be finished. Then it goes in and says, blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,305 days. So that tells you exactly when the seventh trumpet starts, or is blown, or the days of the voice of the seventh trumpet. It's not just one day, it goes on and on and on. All right. Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,305 days, but go thy way until the end be, for thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot at the end of the days. Okay, so seventh trumpet is blown in the 10th month at the end of Hanukkah, the 10th month, 2020. It's going to go roughly until Pentecost. All right? And Pentecost 2021. That's an important time period. So the 1,335 days start counting at the seventh trumpet. You're going to count 1,335 days forward. What does that bring you to? Well, it brings you to the end of the timeline in 2024. It brings you to the end of the timeline in 2024. It brings you to the seventh bowl. And the thing here that's really standing out and telling us that this is exactly what's going on is in Revelation 10, verse 7. But in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished, as he hath declared to his servants the prophets. What servants the prophets? Well, Daniel. Revelation and Daniel can't be separated here. They have to be read together, bound together by prophecy. And then, so Daniel 12:7 says, and I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times, and half a time. That's 3.5 years. When he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, and all these things shall be finished. That's 3.5 year period. But we know ahead of time when that 3.5 year period is going to start. We know 2 months and 15 days before it's going to start when it starts. Okay? We know that because there's 1,335 days at the end of that same chapter in Daniel. Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,305 days. Verse 11 says, from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,305 days. But go thy way till the end be, for thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot at the end of the days. So you go to the end, and you start counting backwards 1,335 days. You come to 2 months and 15 days before the seventh trumpet is blown, and before the second half of the Great Tribulation begins, 1,260 days, found in Daniel 12:7. It says, and after these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. As opposed to Daniel 7, verse 2. All right, Daniel 7, verse 2 says, Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, behold, the four winds of heaven strove upon the great sea. And Matthew 24, verse 31 through 32. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender, and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh.
All right, and now we're going to move into the 7 bowls. You're going to find those bowls in the book of Revelation, chapter 16. And the first one starts off in verse 2. Verse 2 says, And the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth, and there fell a noisome grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worshipped his image. So this noisome grievous sore is the result of the 5th trumpet, locust plague. With that said, if you go back to the 5th trumpet, you'll notice that it was a year before the 6th bowl. So we have now formed another pattern. With the woes, you can expect them to hit or to come to fruition about a year after the initial trumpet was blown. All right, praise God. So the 5th trumpet, it took a year for the noisome grievous sores to fall upon men, which they already have been, and we are living through that time right now, speeding towards the 2nd bowl, which is due to occur at the abomination that makes desolate on the 11th of November, 2021. The 2nd bowl is in Revelation 16, verse 3, and it says, And the 2nd angel poured out his vial upon the sea, and it became as the blood of a dead man, and every living soul died in the sea. So the 2nd bowl is going to correspond with the 6th trumpet. And the 6th trumpet can be found in Revelation 9, verse 13. It says, And the 6th angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the 6th angel which had the trumpet, Loose the 4 angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the 3rd part of men. So I'm pretty sure that you can see the resemblance in the scriptures. Revelation 16, verse 3 said, The 2nd angel poured out his vial upon the sea, and it became as the blood of a dead man, and every living soul died in the sea. And if we go back to Revelation 9, verse 13 through 17, it did just say, The 6th angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the 6th angel which had the trumpet, Loose the 4 angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And the 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the 3rd part of men. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000. All right, and now we get to the 3rd bowl. And the 3rd bowl can be found in Revelation 16, verse 4. And it says, The 3rd angel poured out his vial upon the rivers and fountains of waters, and they became blood. And I heard the angel of the waters say, Thou art righteous, O Lord, which art and wast and shall be, because thou hast judged thus. For they have shed the blood of saints and prophets, and thou hast given them blood to drink, for they are worthy. And I heard another out of the altar say, Even so, Lord God Almighty, true and righteous are thy judgments. So you can also see the resemblance here between the 3rd bowl being poured out in Revelation 16 verse 4. It says, he poured it out on the rivers and fountains of waters, and they became blood. If you go back and you look at the seventh trumpet, you will find a resemblance when it's talking about judgment. And then from there, 16 verse 5 says, and I heard the angel of the waters say, thou art righteous, O Lord, which art and wast and shall be, because thou hast judged us. All right, so when are we judged? We're judged at the end, when our bodies are no longer. And if you go back to Revelation chapter 10 and go to verse 7, it says, but in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished, as he has declared to his servants the prophets. And the voice which I heard from heaven spake unto me again, and said, go and take the little book which is open in the hand of the angel which standeth upon the sea and upon the earth. I went to the angel, and he said unto him, give me the little book. And he said unto me, take it, and eat it up, and it shall make thy belly bitter, but it shall be in thy mouth sweet as honey. And I took the little book out of the angel's hand, and ate it up, and it was in my mouth sweet as honey. And as soon as I had eaten it, my belly was bitter. And he said unto me, thou must prophesy again before many peoples, nations, tongues, and kings. Revelation 10, starting at verse 7 through 11, and Revelation 16, verse 4, 5, 6, and 7. It's talking about the current time until judgment, because it says, thou hast judged us. The fourth bowl, it is in Revelation 16, verse 8. And it says, the fourth angel poured out his vial upon the sun, and power was given unto him to scorch men with fire. And men were scorched with great heat, and blasphemed the name of God, which has power over these plagues, and they repented not to give him glory. The fifth bowl, you can find that in Revelation 16, verse 10. And it says, and the fifth angel poured out his vial upon the seat of the beast, and his kingdom was full of darkness. And they gnawed their tongues for pain, and blasphemed the God of heaven because of their pains and their sores, and repented not of their deeds. So this bowl is a repercussion of some of the previous bowls. So in it, you see that it says that they gnawed their tongues for pain because of their sores. Well, that was the first bowl. And they repented not of their deeds is the fourth bowl. It says in verse 9 of 16 that men were scorched with great heat, and blasphemed the name of God, which hath power over these plagues, and they repented not to give him glory. The next verse, verse 12 of 16, Revelation, says, and the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. And I saw 3 unclean spirits, like frogs, come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. At this point, we have some more information that comes right after that. It says in verse 14, for they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty, Armageddon. Then the next verse is a quote from Jesus, and he said, behold, I come as a thief. Blessed as is he that watcheth and keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. Now, this is referring to the 1335 days. Blessed is he who endures until the end. Now, the last bowl is in 16, verse 17. It says, And the seventh angel poured out his vial into the air, and there came a great voice out of the temple of heaven from the throne, saying, It is done. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth. So mighty an earthquake and so great. And the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell, and great Babylon came in remembrance before God, to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. Now at this point, we're moving into the period of judgment. It then says, And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will shew thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So what I'm going to do, since I'm having terrible technical difficulties for some reason, and I can't really finish the video until I get some things fixed here, I'm going to sum up this video. But I want to leave you guys with this note. The 42 months that you see at the bottom of your screen, it says Esther 9 verse 10 is where we get the information for this, because Haman was a type of Antichrist. He was the Jews' enemy. That's quote, end quote, of Esther. It says that he was the Jews' enemy. He is a type of Antichrist, and he was hung on the very gallows that he made to hang Mordecai. Now, Mordecai ultimately was not hanged because the devil's schemes were revealed to Ahasuerus, and Ahasuerus had him hanged on the very gallows that Haman made for Mordecai. And that happened during the Feast of Purim, which is the 13th and 14th day of the 12th month. And that happened in the 12th year. So at the bottom of your screen, you're going to see a faint red bar. This is 42 months. And it ends in the 12th month of the 12th year. And that would correspond with the 6th bowl. With the 6th bowl, it goes on to talk about the 3 unclean spirits. Could the 42 months have something to do with the Antichrist in Purim? Is he going to die in February of that year, February 2023? Well, we can only assume that Bible prophecy is pointing us in that direction. I have not been able to confirm it. I'm going to keep on trying. And when I do, I will make a video about it. Okay, guys. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you found it informative. Thank you for your support, and God bless.
A great white throne. And him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. Revelation 20 verse 12. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were opened. And another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books, according to their works. Revelation 20 verse 13. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them. And they were judged, every man according to their works.